All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going deep, really deep into something pretty fascinating, how we learn by watching others.
Uh-huh.
Specifically, we're going to be looking at the brain's mirror neuron system and how that connects to visual learning, like videos and animations and stuff.
Right.
You pointed us towards some really interesting research on this, so basically what we're going to do is unpack, what is the mirror neuron system and then the practical implications of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a really fascinating area. And, the idea that we humans are kind of wired to learn by watching and imitating others, it might seem kind of obvious, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you think about a child copying their parents, but the really cool thing is the underlying neuroscience that's revealing how essential this mechanism is, throughout our lives. It's not just kids. It's deeply ingrained in us.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you're trying to learn a new yoga pose,
Yeah.
or even something more complex, like you're putting together some furniture from like IKEA instructions,
Oh.
and it's just like, it's so much easier just to watch someone do it successfully than to just stare at diagrams, right?
Totally.
And actually, according to cognitive load theory, this isn't just us feeling this way. This is actually a more efficient way to learn, especially when you're new to something.
Yeah, for sure.
Seeing an expert model of behavior really reduces that overwhelmed feeling.
For sure.
And so, big takeaway here is that if you're teaching something, particularly where the learner needs to physically do something,
Uh-huh.
showing them how to do it in a video isn't just like a nice thing. It might actually be hitting on a really fundamental brain mechanism that's going to make it way easier to learn and stick better.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you're faced with something that's totally new and you have no idea what the steps are, your
Yeah.
brain's really got to work hard to
Yeah.
figure that out. But in many situations, learning by watching can actually be this really, much more efficient way to get to the skills and the information that you need. And that's what research has shown, whether it's live, whether it's in a video, or even in a well-crafted description, written description.
Yeah.
Learning from examples from experts is incredibly effective for both physical and mental abilities, particularly for beginners.
All right. So this brings us to the fascinating part, which is like what's going on in our brains.
Yeah.
Tell us about these mirror neurons. It sounds like a sci-fi movie.
It does a bit. It has that futuristic ring to it.
Mm.
The discovery actually came about kind of unexpectedly
Oh.
back in the 1990s.
Right.
Researchers were looking at monkey brains as they were doing stuff like grabbing objects.
Okay.
And what they found, quite surprisingly, was that the same neurons would fire not only when the monkey was doing the grabbing, but also when the monkey watched someone else, in this case the researcher, do the grabbing. So that's kind of where the name came from. It's this mirroring, like it's being reflected in the observer's brain.
So the monkey's brain is almost like it's doing it itself,
Exactly. Yeah.
even though it's just watching.
It's like a simulation.
Is this something that happens consciously, or is this totally behind the scenes?
Yeah, it seems to be, for the most part, an automatic process.
Wow.
An unconscious one. Now, keep in mind, with the monkeys, the research involves actually directly recording from these brain cells, and we can't really do that ethically with humans.
Right.
But we have ways of looking. So we have, fMRI. It's a brain imaging technique that lets us see which parts of the brain are active.
Okay.
And we also have TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. And that lets us actually stimulate or stop activity in specific areas. And what all of this research is telling us is that, yeah, it looks like we humans have a very similar thing going on in our motor system.
Okay.
So when we see someone doing something, it's like we're kind of doing it ourselves in our brains.
Wow, that's so interesting. So we've established we have this mirroring system, but are we just blindly copying everything we see? Because, I mean, there's got to be a difference between mimicking someone's actions and actually understanding the goal of what they're doing and even maybe improving on it.
Absolutely, yeah. And that is a really important distinction. And this is where the human mirror neuron system seems to go, beyond what we see in monkeys.
Okay.
So in monkeys, it seems to be mostly about the goal of the action.
Okay.
So, the monkey sees you grab a banana, their mirror neurons are firing, but it's about the goal of getting that banana. Humans seem to also encode the details of how that goal is achieved.
Okay.
And it's that ability to pick up on the nuances that allows us to truly imitate, so not just the outcome, but actually the method.
So a monkey might just want to get the banana any way it can.
Right.
But a human could watch you peel the banana, starting from the stem with one hand, and then they could reproduce that exact technique.
Exactly. Yeah, and it even goes deeper, the mirror neuron system in us humans also seems to be really involved in understanding the intentions behind the actions.
Okay.
And that's really important,
Yeah.
because it allows us not just to see what's being done, but the why. Like, why is it being done that way? And that's crucial for being able to apply what we've learned in a different situation.
So it's not just memorizing the steps. You're trying to figure out the logic of it,
Yeah.
the why behind the what.
Exactly, exactly. There's this great study with toddlers. It really shows us well. So these toddlers watched an adult turn on a light switch with their forehead.
Okay.
And what they found was the babies didn't just copy that, they were interpreting.
Wow.
So if the adult's hands were filled, the baby would often use their forehead.
Oh.
Like they got it. Like, oh, you have to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
But if the hands were empty, the baby would usually just use their hand.
Right.
Showing that they understood the goal was to turn the light on and that this was a better way to do it. So
Yeah.
it's rational imitation.
So they're not just robots. They're actually figuring out, okay, what's the best way to do this?
Yeah. It's amazing to see in those little babies, isn't it?
So the research initially focused on observing other humans.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, a lot of it, yeah.
But what about when we're watching like robots do things or even animated demonstrations? Do our mirror neurons still activate?
Yeah, this is another really interesting part of it. So initially, people thought that the mirror neuron system only reacted to biological human things.
Okay.
But more recent research is saying maybe it's more about the goal of the action than whether it's a human doing it or a robot.
Okay.
As long as it's goal-directed and you can relate it to something a human would do,
Makes sense.
it can still activate.
So my brain's recognizing, okay, that's a purposeful movement.
Yeah.
I understand that.
And it can go beyond actually seeing something.
Yeah.
Just hearing a description or imagining yourself doing it can trigger similar brain areas.
Yeah.
So it really points to this really interconnected network in our brains that deals with controlling our movements, mirroring, and even mental simulation.
So we've got a good understanding of the mirror neuron system.
Yeah.
And now let's connect this back to visual learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were saying earlier that understanding this system could really help us figure out when these dynamic visualizations, like videos and animations, are the best way to teach, particularly for motor skills.
Exactly. And, this has been a big debate in education, whether dynamic visualizations are always better than static images for learning. And it's a really interesting one. I mean, you would think that seeing movement would be more effective.
You'd think so, right? Yeah.
But the research, it's actually been mixed. It's not a clear-cut answer.
Yeah, you'd think if you're trying to tie some, like, super complex knot, watching a video of an expert doing it would be way better than just looking at a series of pictures.
Yeah.
But you're saying it's not always so simple.
It's not that simple.
So what are some of the reasons why?
Well, one of the main reasons is our good old friend working memory.
Okay.
Dynamic visualizations, by their very nature, it's a constant flow of information.
Yeah.
So learners have to juggle, processing what they're seeing right now.
Right.
Remember what they saw a second ago, and then connect it all together.
Yeah.
And this can lead to something called temporal split attention effect, where basically you're forgetting the beginning before you get to the end.
Right, like you're reading a recipe, and it's like, first you need this ingredient, and then like 5 pages later, it's like, now add that ingredient.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, forgotten it by then.
You've totally forgotten.
Yeah.
Static images don't have that same issue, right?
Right.
The information is just there. You can go back to it. And simply replaying a dynamic visualization doesn't always fix this because the split attention can occur during each viewing.
So even though movement seems helpful, it's almost like it's too much information at once.
Yeah, it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
Can't possibly take it all in.
You can't process it all.
No. And that's actually, one of the reasons why dynamic visualizations don't always win out, despite us thinking that, seeing the movement should be more helpful for learning movement. And so researchers have come up with these principles, like congruency, that the dynamic visualization should really match how the learner needs to think about the information.
Okay.
Like if you're learning a dance routine,
Yeah.
it needs to show those steps.
It should really break it down.
Exactly. And then, apprehension. It needs to be easier to understand than a static image.
Okay.
So if the animation's too fast or too complex, you can't even see what's going on, then it's not helping.
So it's not just movement for the sake of movement.
No.
It needs to be like the right speed. It needs to be clear.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is where the mirror neuron system comes in, as this really interesting potential explanation for these mixed results. And our thinking is this. Dynamic visualizations might be especially good when you're trying to teach a task that involves, human movement.
Okay.
And the idea is this. Seeing human movement automatically triggers those mirror neurons,
Uh-huh.
and it leads to this embodied simulation. So your brain's kind of like, I'm doing that.
Okay.
And this might help us get around some of those working memory limitations that we were just talking about. It's like we're naturally wired to process and learn from watching other humans do things.
So if I'm watching someone tie that knot,
Yeah.
my mirror neurons are firing, helping me internalize that.
Exactly, yeah.
More so than if I was just looking at diagrams.
That's what we think, and the research does seem to support this.
Sure.
Studies have shown that dynamic visualizations are better than static ones for things like learning to tie knots, assembling objects,
Uh-huh.
first aid procedures,
Right.
folding origami, and even sports techniques.
Yeah, those are all things where you actually have to do something at the end of the day.
Yeah,
And you're often assessed on how well you can do that thing.
exactly. You're learning to perform an action,
Yeah.
and you're usually being evaluated on whether you can do that action.
Right.
It's different from, learning about a chemical process where you might watch an animation of molecules,
Right.
but then you take a multiple choice test. You don't have to actually, act like a molecule.
Right. They're not going to ask me to simulate the rotation of the Earth.
Exactly, exactly.
So if the mirror neuron system is so important, does that mean we always have to see actual humans in these videos?
Mm-hmm.
Like what if it's just hands moving an object or even just the object moving on its own?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like with origami, a lot of times you don't even see the hands.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like paper folding.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And, while realism is important, what the research tells us about the mirror neuron system is this. As long as the animation is clearly showing a movement, that's goal-directed, and we understand that it's connected to something a human could do, it doesn't have to be a human.
Okay.
So it could be like a cartoon figure, a robotic arm. As long as we can see the goal and it makes sense to us, it can still be effective.
So it's about that perceived human-like movement,
Yeah.
not necessarily the realism.
And the logic of it, like you said earlier.
So we've been talking a lot about motor skills.
Yeah.
What about cognitive skills,
Uh-huh.
like math, problem solving?
Yeah.
Does the mirror neuron system play a similar role there?
Yeah, that's a big question, and it's kind of still an open question.
Okay.
Observational learning definitely works for cognitive skills.
Mhm.
Think about learning from examples in a textbook.
Uh-huh.
But we don't know for sure if the brain mechanisms are the same,
Okay.
because cognitive actions, like mental math, logic, problem-solving strategies, you can't see them the same way you see someone moving their arm.
Right. I can see someone write down the stakes to a math problem,
Yeah,
but I can't see them thinking about it.
exactly. Yeah. But there are some really cool parallels.
Okay.
So, for example, learning a motor task that involves a sequence can actually help with your cognitive understanding of that sequence as well.
Okay.
And the ability to understand intentions seems important in both.
Right.
And just like imagining a physical action can activate those motor areas,
Uh-huh.
mentally going through the steps of solving a problem can also sometimes be helpful. But it seems to work best when you already have some knowledge in that area.
So prior knowledge plays a bigger role with cognitive skills.
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
Like if I'm watching someone solve a crazy difficult equation, but I don't even understand the basic concepts, it's not going to help me.
Yeah, you need that foundation.
Yeah.
And this might have to do with the idea of, biologically primary knowledge versus secondary. Our brains might just be better at processing information related to human movement. It's something we've evolved to do.
Right.
And then you've got things like math and logic that are more culturally developed. But even with complex motor skills, we still need some prior knowledge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So to sum up, the mirror neuron system seems like it's a really big reason why we learn so well from watching other humans move.
Yeah.
And when we see someone doing something, our brain's like, I'm doing that too,
Mm.
especially with videos and animations.
Yeah, and it seems like the key is that clear depiction of goal-directed, human-like movement.
So for someone who's really into learning, what's the takeaway here?
Well, if you're trying to learn a new motor skill, or if you're teaching someone else, look for or create those dynamic visualizations that really clearly show the movements.
If I'm trying to learn a tricky guitar chord, a video showing someone's fingers on the fretboard is probably going to be way better than just a diagram.
Exactly. Yeah. And, we've learned a lot about this system, but there's still so much more to discover.
Hmm.
Like, how does it really interact with our working memory limitations? And is there a similar system for learning cognitive skills?
Right.
That's the next big question.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
It's amazing to think about how much we're learning about the brain and how we learn.
Yeah.
Now, here's something to think about.
Hmm.
As technology gets even better, and we see more virtual reality and augmented reality learning experiences,
Yeah.
how can we use what we know about mirror neurons to create even better ways to learn both physical and mental skills by watching others?
Uh-huh.
What if we could actually virtually embody the person we're learning from and experience their actions or even their thought processes?
Yeah.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
Thanks for joining me for this deep dive. It's been great.
My pleasure.
All right, until next time.